got all kinds of events happening right now, and yet the Calgary's finest are not bothering them. This is the hypocrisy of this city. This is the hypocrisy of our wonderful, fearless leaders. Where is the head name? She, the mayor of this city. I was willing to admit that all the evidence the Crown is presenting of me being there, feeding the poor, yes, I did it. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm willing to stand up in front of the court and say, yes, Your Honor, I did feed those people. I still feed them. And
he's entered a not guilty plea.
Yeah.
So he's not denying that he was there, that he participated in the event, that the event was certainly more than 0 people, which was the private social gathering restriction at the time.
Right.
What he is disputing is, what is a private social gathering?
Right.
And does that capture what he was doing? And his position is no. So he is disputing it in the sense that he's entered a not guilty plea.
Yeah.
But he's not disputing much of the evidence that's been called regarding identification and showing photos of what's occurred.
So here for Rebel News, and I am now joined by Sarah Miller of JSS Barristers, who has been working tirelessly to ensure that Pastor Artur Pawlowski receives the best legal defense that money can buy, thanks to your donations at saveartur.com. Pastor Artur Pawlowski was once again in court this week, this time for daring to help feed the poor, participating in a number of gatherings, I guess. What exactly is it? It's hard to keep track. What is being decided or what is being discussed by the courts this week?
The charge against Artur Pawlowski is a Public Health Act violation. So under the Public Health Act, it says that the CMOH can issue orders. They did throughout the pandemic, because I'm sure most Albertans will remember. They issued an order that prohibited private social gatherings.
Right.
That was December 2020. In December 2020, Mr. Pawlowski attended 2 gatherings. Our position is that they were not private or social. They don't meet the description or definition of private social gatherings. They were very clearly public gatherings conducted for worship purposes or political protest purposes. So that's what we're in court dealing with.
So this went on for 3 days. The thing that I'm kind of hung up on here is, if I'm not mistaken, Hatem Care of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, on in fact the exact same event for his client Brad Kerrigan, already went through all these arguments, and there's already a binding in this, and it's in this exact same window. It's not like a potentially applicable decision, but it's a decision that these types of protests are absolutely not social gatherings. So our thought process when we talked about that originally, and my thought process today, is why is the court, which is overlogged and backlogged, spending 3 days calling forward all these witnesses, putting on this show when it seems that a decision's already been rendered?
Yeah, so just to be clear, the court doesn't get to really decide usually what it hears, what it doesn't hear. So this is the Crown prosecutor who's decided to bring this case for 3 days. There are 2 events that the Crown is talking about, December 13th and December 20th. So there are 2 dates. December 20th, though, as you indicate, has already been declared by Judge Dinkle to not have been a private social gathering, doesn't meet the definition. So frankly, it's beyond me as to why that continues to be an issue in this trial.
So what is happening over the course of 3 days? Obviously, we're very lucky. We had Celine Gallison as well as Sheila Gunn sort of live tweeting and covering some of the court proceedings. But for folks who maybe weren't following those court proceedings, what sort of things are happening that can take 3 days on something that would seem to usually amount to a fine, feeding the homeless, violating these health? Why has this become such a sort of production?
I can't tell you why exactly. The Crown has chosen to bring their case as they've decided is the way they want to. That includes bringing 9 witnesses, and we're currently having a side issue as to admissibility of some of the evidence. So for those who were following the live tweets, there is evidence that we can't discuss because it's under voir dire. But essentially, the meat of the matter is taking 9 days of going through the Crown's case on the Crown's schedule.
And now I've heard, kind of from seeing the live tweets, there are, is it something like 9 witnesses? Are we allowed to discuss that? So 9 witnesses testifying to the fact that what happened, essentially. And despite another ruling already stating that that's not a private gathering, they're just restating what is likely on video and there's evidence of. And I don't think Pastor Artur Pawlowski is denying. Is that correct?
Well, he's entered a not guilty plea.
Yeah.
Like, so he's not denying that he was there, that he participated in the event, that the event was certainly more than 0 people, which was the private social gathering restriction at the time.
Right.
What he is disputing is, what is a private social gathering?
Right.
And does that capture what he was doing? And his position is no. So he is disputing it in the sense that he's entered a not guilty plea.
Yeah.
But he's not disputing much of the evidence that's been called regarding identification and showing photos of what's occurred.
Yeah. And so that sort of begs the question, if the larger question seems to be whether this was a private gathering or not, and if the order applied. There seems to be a sort of ruling on that already, at least before the courts. The amount of money and resources being spent on the policing on this prosecution case, is it adding anything new, or is it presenting new information that pertains to whether or not this was a private gathering?
I mean, everybody has their own way of describing what happens, what occurs. There wasn't a lot of evidence brought in the Kerrigan case, so I can't say it's precisely the same because Kerrigan didn't have a lot of evidence called. But in my estimation, this is a unfortunate use of court resources when we know that courts are, as you say, overburdened with matters that are proceeding that have quite substantial weight. It's not that I'm suggesting that the Crown should not be proceeding at all. That they're welcome to do their job as they please. But this is 3 days not done yet, and have more days to come, and likely 3 more days to come.
Right.
To, as you say, figure out a defense that could be argued in a morning, like in the Kerrigan case.
So I just wanted to ask for folks out there, obviously there's been quite like a litany of persecutions, prosecutions, whatever you want to call them, against Pastor Artur Pawlowski. If you can, I know this is on the spot, is there any of the sort of pending charges that are truly behind Pastor Artur Pawlowski that have been dealt with? What is still pending? What has to be dealt with moving forward?
He's received numerous tickets similar to the ones that we're dealing with in court this week under the Public Health Act that were successfully withdrawn or otherwise disposed of. So there is those, I suppose, of early April, May 2020, 2 years ago, early pandemic days that have been withdrawn or disposed of. Those are behind him. Okay. Otherwise, we've got this ticket, we've got ongoing now criminal charges for the Coots protest and also other related matters that flow from the Germain order and the appeal of Justice Germain's order, which we are going to be in court on next week.
Well, we'll certainly be following that and bringing people all the latest updates. I'm sure we'll speak to you again. As always, Sarah Miller, I want to thank you so much for this update. For everyone at home, as you've just heard, Pastor Artur Pawlowski is still in for the legal fight of his life. If you want to ensure that he has, as we mentioned, the very best legal defense, you can chip in and make a tax receipt eligible donation to the Democracy Fund at saveartur.com. We know Pastor Artur has been through so much for so long, but his fight is still very much ahead of him, and he's counting on you more than ever. So once again, Sarah Miller of JSS Barristers, thanks so much. And for everyone at home watching, I want to thank you for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Sos. Well, as you just heard, Pastor Artur Pawlowski is still in for the legal fight of his life moving forward, and he's counting on your help more than ever. You can actually make a tax receipt eligible donation to the Democracy Fund. Those funds will be used to help keep Sarah Miller and the team at JSS Barristers working on behalf of Pastor Artur Pawlowski, and you can make those donations at saveartur.com.